Hey girl, Marissa here. You are listening to the Codependency podcast. As a young woman, you have been raised, reinforced, and rewarded for putting the needs of others above your own. That is for being codependent. Now in your 20s, you're exhausted, exasperated, and enveloped in crap relationships, especially the one you have with yourself. This podcast is to help you undo all that so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. Let's get to it. Hey. I am so excited for you guys to hear this week's episode with Hailey Johnson, certified yoga instructor. Be sure to stay tuned till the end of the episode for an exciting announcement related to Hailey is going to give some recommendations at the end, and I have a surprise related to that. So I will see you guys at the end of the episode. And now, here's Hailey. Okay, so today we have Hailey Johnson. She's the owner of Bloom Yoga and Wellness, and her mission is to teach others how to find inner peace and happiness through breathwork, meditation, and self-care. She is committed to sharing the healing tools of yoga, honoring the ancient roots, and her company offers a holistic and empowering environment that is welcoming for all walks of life. Hailey, thank you for coming on the Codependency podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. It's such an honor to be in this space with you and to learn from you and to offer some of my own experience to others. So thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. All right. So first things first, I ask everybody, how do you define codependency?
So to me, codependency is a reliance or dependence in something external, something outside of yourself. So self-worth is placed outside of who you are, maybe in a job or a person, a label or a title. And that identity is what is used to fuel you for happiness, for love, or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. So in short, that's my definition.
Yes. Very succinct and also encapsulates a lot. And you know, being a young woman, Hailey, I'm a young woman, most listeners are young women. How has codependency come up in your own life?
Oh, wow. This is such a loaded question, but codependency for me is something that has been very prevalent, especially in my younger years. I have two very distinct memories and cases of being heavily reliant on external things. And the first one is I am a former NCAA gymnast. So I competed at the Division I level, and I was a gymnast for 17 years. So this is a huge chunk of my life. This was my identity. I practiced a million hours a day. I was practicing about 30 hours a week. So you can imagine how wrapped up I was in this sport. And it's so interesting now because I look back and I realize that between the ages of 8 and 12, our identities are really starting to develop. And so the more successful I was at my sport, the more I placed my value in that identity. And so, you know, being successful, I went to college, I did all this stuff. It was great, but it was this sport is really what gave me my value and my self-worth, my confidence, my self-esteem. And so at 23, when I retired from college, it was ripped out from underneath me. And I absolutely hit rock bottom because for so long, I had placed all of my value outside of myself in something that could be taken away. And I think this is so prevalent for athletes. We see this a lot with veterans, people who have are in a career for a long time that place all of their, you know, their value, their self-care into something else. And then when it's taken away, there's this identity crisis and this deep, searching for who am I? Who am I really? Because my identity was so intertwined with this label. But through that, I'm grateful for that experience, because hitting rock bottom is what really allowed me to pursue my yoga journey, and to prioritize my self-care and my mental health. But I realized that my life was revolving around something outside of myself. And I think a lot of my yoga philosophy comes from this experience, and knowing that it's wonderful to strive for hobbies and things outside, but it's also so important to know that my happiness comes from within myself and not from something outside. I cannot rely on something or someone. So that's a first case. And I would consider that as like severe codependency on something.
Right. Before we move on to number 2, can I ask, right, because typically codependency is associated with that reliance, that dependence on, right, you said like a thing or another person. So here's your identity as a successful gymnast, and right, like, you were reliant, you were dependent, you got your self-worth from that role, but also it wasn't just another person, it was your coaches, the judges, the fans, your teammates. Can you talk about little gold stars or tens or hundreds that you did get that you really did become dependent on?
Yeah, I would say the sport of gymnastics is probably the only sport where you lose points for your imperfections. And so as a young athlete, striving for perfection is always the goal. It's always, the ultimate goal. We want to be perfect 10. We want to look perfect. We never want to make a mistake. And so there's this environment of, performing always. And so fitting into a box of what my coaches wanted me to look like, what my coaches wanted me, how they wanted me to perform, performing for the judges. It was all a performance. It was never really authentic. And I was so reliant on external validation. I wanted their approval so bad, because that's all I knew. I'm like, what am I striving for? I'm striving for their acceptance. And it's so funny looking back now, realizing that the only acceptance that is important is my own inner acceptance. But this became this journey of consistent, striving for something outside of myself that I would never be able to fulfill. And I think it's very, very prevalent. And I'll get very vulnerable in this, striving for being good enough or feeling like I belonged had major impacts on my relationship with my body image, the way that I looked on the outside, the way that I felt, my mental health, battling with my own disordered eating to try to fit into this box, to really try to manipulate my entire life just for this approval. So all of my self-care was kicked to the curb. Gymnastics was my absolute priority. And then you throw in the pressure of competing for your team. When I got into college, it was no longer just about me. I'm representing the school. I'm representing my teammates. It's up to me to do my job. And so there's a lot of pressure to, continue to be perfect. And so that is, it just, the whole thing is just extremely codependent on things outside of yourself. And I think that there's a level of inauthenticity within this sports in general, trying to please people and just to show up a certain way. So
right. Okay, one more question, and then we'll go to number 2. Reflecting on this 17-year career, right, being so reliant on the tens, the nodding from your coach, the support, and whatever, high fives from your teammates. What was it like during those 17 years when you didn't get that approval that you sought, right? Where you worked your butt off and it wasn't good enough, right? When you're like, am I worthy? And they were like, not today.
Mm-hmm.
Like what moment or what was that like to get that?
I would say because the sport was so like such a perfectionist sport that any downfalls or any like failures were absolutely debilitating for me because
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I had to be a robot, because there was so much just pressure. And I would say that at the end of the day that I never fully felt accepted or validated in my self-worth or worthiness. um, I think it was something that I was always striving for, and it's a feeling of emptiness.
Mm-hmm.
There's a feeling of emptiness, like I'll never get what I want or need from them. So it's kind of like it has like a little negative, feeling to it. But I think that's, talking about codependency, I think this is really important that we talk about this stuff because it really does affect your self-worth, your self-esteem, your confidence in and out of the gym. It was my main priority. I did not School was on the back burner. I always said I was an athlete student.
Mm-hmm.
So school, any other hobbies, even my family, everything else was on the back burner. So this heightened, um, it was like on a pedestal. And so you can imagine the higher you go, the harder you fall.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just kind of in a nutshell, it's a very empty feeling.
Mm-hmm. Empty.
Mm-hmm.
For the tens, the approving coach, the content teammates, right? So other people are important, but it's a select few, not your family, not your friends, not your teachers, right? We can't be codependent on everybody, thank God. I don't know what we would do. But for you, like the select few, that's just where your energy went.
Yeah, and it was exhausting, very, very exhausting to, you know, uh, just be expending so much energy on what people think. The way that how they perceive the way that I show up was like, I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh my
But,
gosh.
I'm so grateful for these experiences because this is what is so the beautiful part of growth. Having these experiences allows us to grow and learn from them. I think we're all human. Codependency still shows up in our day-to-day lives, but I think there's more of like an awareness around it now.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to put ourselves in check or get curious about why I may be feeling like I need to be codependent on something or someone now. So,
Right. Right.
mhm.
So there's wisdom, hearing wisdom.
Yeah.
And what was the second example?
So the second example is a previous relationship. This is a relationship in college, and we were together for about 4 years, but it was a very codependent relationship. We did everything together, and again, it was like our identities were like intertwined. We spent so much time together. Again, both athletes,
Mm.
and it was unhealthy and codependent because I solely relied on my happiness from him. And so I realize now, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so like I didn't I didn't even know what self-love was. And so I look back with compassion for myself because I'm like, wow, I had no clue what self-love even meant. And so again, I was striving for things outside of myself to fill me up. But when that relationship ended, it was again rock bottom. It was about the same time that I lost my sport. So it was like a double whammy. I was just like
Mm.
completely not knowing who I was anymore, not knowing the value of myself. I didn't know the value of my own brilliance back then, because I didn't know. I didn't really have a relationship with myself. Um, but again, these I'm grateful for these experiences because this is what allows us to continue to evolve and is ultimately why I sought out more of pursuing mental health, pursuing yoga, meditation, and things like that to really get in alignment with myself,
Mm-hmm.
really come to a place of inner worthiness. So,
Right.
mhm.
Value of your brilliance.
Yes.
And, you know, reflecting on that 4-year relationship, intertwined, both athletes, is there a codependent moment that you sense really paints a good picture of this is what codependency looked like for the two of you?
I would say like the initial breakup is when I realized how codependent I was on him for my value, because I didn't have any value. I felt no self-esteem. I didn't feel that I was lovable after that breakup. And I felt that I was no longer happy. I slipped into a very deep depression at this point because, like I said, I lost my sport and my boyfriend, my best friend. And it was hard. I had to pull myself out of a rut. And I ultimately realized that if if I'm going to change my life, it's got to come from me. It's not going to come from anyone outside of myself. But again, that moment and that experience was probably the most prevalent example of, wow, I just spent so much of my life placing my value outside, relying on him, relying on, him to make me happy or feel good or whatever,
Right. Lovable. You said you didn't feel lovable once you broke up. You were just a loveless, unlovable,
I felt unworthy.
Gymnast.
Yeah. I was like, who am I? What am I doing here? I have no clue. I didn't even know who I was. That's the thing. I felt everything was stripped from me and I was identityless. I was like, okay, who's Hailey Johnson? So yeah, I think there's like an awareness and also a responsibility piece to it also, knowing it now and looking back, I'm like, okay, cool. That experience was necessary for me to learn. And now it's my responsibility to change my life, my responsibility to figure out how I can get in tune with myself and remind myself that everything I need is truly within myself.
And, right, 17 years. Your childhood, right? And 4 years in a relationship as a very young woman, and you lose both. How did you, right? I had codependent relationships, kind of just one right after another. And then there was the realization that you had, right? I'm responsible. I have to find the value of my brilliance and that I'm lovable by myself. But I think a lot of listeners, young and old, they don't hit a bottom once, right? And so how were you able to experience such a shift in your paradigm? Like, how did you do that?
Honestly, as soon as I hit rock bottom, I was like, something has to change. And I had this insatiable thirst for self-development and self-knowledge. I just wanted to know more about myself. And thankfully, I found a lot of really, really great mentors and people right after this period to mentor me and to show me tools. I was going to therapy and, thankfully, I was going for, therapy for the loss of my relationship, but I realized that a lot of my issues were a lot deeper, and it had to do with the loss of my sport. But I hadn't put the two and two together. I didn't really know what I was experiencing. Now I look back and I know that I was experiencing significant grief for my sport, and the grief of the loss of that relationship. But also, I was grieving the loss of who I was in those chapters. I was grieving and also celebrating the walking into the next best version of who I was becoming. And I felt like at this time, although I hit rock bottom, it was also my saving grace, because I realized that I am the painter, the designer of my life. And I had this clean canvas that anything that I really wanted to do at this point, I felt like the world had just opened up in a million different ways. And in a sense, I was almost free. I felt like I had just been born. You know, I spent so much time in a gym when I was young. I told you I work out 30 hours a week. And that was, you know, I saw my coaches and my teammates more than my family. But now all of a sudden I have all this time to travel and to explore and to meet new people and to build myself in areas that I want to build in, you know, not necessarily in school doing subjects that I really wasn't interested in. But now it's like, wow, I can really do things that I care about. And so I just really, I like completely just dived in. I, you know, let go of the reins, and I'm so grateful for, you know, the therapy, the personal development. I did a lot of personal development. I was living in Vegas at the time, and I always say that
odd place for an awakening.
Yes, you know, a lot of people will be so surprised because Vegas, I feel Vegas is misunderstood because it does have this duality to it. You know, it has this Sin City essence, but there's such a beautiful opportunity within that because it was the perfect place for me to reinvent myself. You know, I went to Vegas and it was like, you can be anything you want to be and no one's going to judge you in Vegas.
Right.
And it was so liberating. I was like, oh my gosh, I can do anything. I can be whoever I want to be. And then I started to get really clear on like who it is I want to become. And as soon as I got super clear on that, I felt like the right people just started lining up, the right kind of people, the right kind of opportunities for me to grow, to learn and develop. But I think it's really getting clear and getting in tune with myself first that allowed me to grow. You know, I was doing meditation and yoga. I took a course it was like a 6-month course that was all about yoga, meditation, reading and writing every single day for 6 months. And that was absolutely transformational for me.
Right.
Huge. And so even now to this day, that's such a huge part of my mental health self-care routine, you know, is really writing and reading and learning and of course yoga, my passion. So that was kind of a long
and so helpful
answer.
Right? Again, my story was very similar after hitting bottom, and just to, right, for those listeners who are either still in the relationship or in some type of long-term career or athletic endeavor, thinking about getting out, or they just got out, or maybe they're getting back into a codependent relationship, it's like, okay, Hailey went to therapy. She sought mentors. I forget what the word was, but I'm going to say she ate a lot of self-development. I think.
Yes.
What was the word?
My insatiable thirst.
Insatiable
self-development.
Thirsty.
I couldn't get enough of it. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yes. And your perspective. This could be the beginning of the end or the end of the beginning. And you took a 6-month writing and yoga course, right? So you really did invest emotionally, financially into healing.
Absolutely.
And then, opportunities, people lined up, and you dug yourself or recreated and rebuilt yourself to not rely on the accolades of judges, the approval of your coaches and teammates, a man, right? You're just out here like, lovable, brilliant.
Yes, absolutely. I think you summed it up perfectly. And I think that it really comes down to emotional intelligence. I think that was like the main turning factor for me to be able to switch my perspective. And, you know, just like you said, for those listeners out there who are experiencing codependency, I think that it's really important to have your own hobbies, to pour into yourself, to really find out what it is that you like, to set your own independent goals. I think that that's so common when we see couples that like every single goal they have is together. And while that's really great for a relationship, I think as an individual, as a person, It's always so great to be building something for yourself, building something, pouring into what you like to do. What is it, really create an intimate relationship with yourself.
Right.
I think that our relationship with ourselves really sets the tone for our relationship with every other person.
Right.
So.
Amen. All right. So you got into yoga, started teaching. Now you own your own practice. And right, in your personal experience and also working with your students, clients,
Students,
fellow healers, fellow journeyers,
friends, my peeps.
Your peeps. Hailey, what have you seen are the short-term and long-term effects, right? Common characteristics of codependency, right? So people-pleasing, enabling, self-sacrifice, putting the needs of others above your own. How have you seen that impact the body?
Yeah, this is very, very prevalent in yoga. And before I jump into, the long-term and short-term effects, I always like to preface that as a yoga teacher, I am merely a guide. And at the end of the day, we are all our own gurus on our own journeys. And so I think that's really important, especially when we talk about codependence, because we have seen in the past, or we do tend to see people seeking out these spiritual teachers or these people that they tend to idolize. And so I always like to preface that first, that, we're all students of life. We're all on our own journey. And ultimately, we're all we're all in this together. So
right. Don't get codependent on Hailey or me.
Yeah, exactly. Or any teachers in general. It's great to have guides. It's great to have people and help, but you don't need to place all your worth or validation in a teacher.
Right.
But the biggest way that I see codependency show up in yoga is people who sacrifice their health and wellness and put it on the back burner and sacrifice their mental health for a job, to please their partner, to take care of everyone but themselves. So I do a yoga survey before I have my people join my membership, and it's an introductory survey to see where they're at, what their goals are. And the most common goal, this is on literally every single person that submits it, is to de-stress and to find more consistency with their self-care routine. And so this codependency leads to stress, anxiety, tension, manifesting in different types of physical ailments.
Right.
That energy is stored in the body. So people have really tense shoulders, or they have, just physical pains and ailments. And then, of course, more long-term effects are leading to something more serious like chronic illness. Just things being stored in the body. We know that emotions are energy in motion. And so when we feel more stressed, or we're worrying about what people may think, we're trying to please everybody else, that really takes a toll on our body, on our nervous system. And so these are very common. We also see it in types of comparison. If you're practicing yoga and you're worried about the way that you look, or some people are afraid to try yoga actually because they don't feel up to par with the physical parts or the physical poses and things. And I think that that's one of my goals, is always to make yoga more accessible for everyone and inviting for everyone. But yeah, those are some pretty huge things that I see very, very common with yoga, and people just putting themselves last.
I remember as a teen, I started attending yoga. I went all throughout college, and I have like a certain set of poses I do at least every morning. I aim to do it in the evening, but that's not as consistent. But I remember we were working on the chakras, and it was a course, and there was this great instructor, and we had to really pay attention to where we sensed our energy was stuck. And I remember my throat chakra was all jacked up. Like I remember, I don't know what exercise we did, but it was so evident. But at the time, I thought I was depressed. I thought I was anxious. I thought I had disordered eating problems. I didn't know that underneath all of that, I was depressed because, yeah, I didn't feel lovable. I was single. I was disappointing people. I was anxious about being unlovable, single, and disappointing people forever. And I wasn't saying much of anything to set boundaries, limits, assert my feelings and needs. And yeah, I just remember I knew that my throat chakra was messed up, but that's all that I really walked out of that from, and like, oh, okay, I need to say more, which isn't easy for a codependent. So in your experience, like, how has yoga and breath work really helped to alleviate or help your students, your peeps, work through their codependency?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So yoga is so much more than just physical asana, and that's the physical poses. There's actually 8 different limbs of yoga, and I just love diving into this stuff because it's so fascinating. But yoga it's a way of life. And so when we practice on the mat, it's also an opportunity for us to take what we practice into the real world. So yoga is the perfect prerequisite for situations that may be more tense, where you may be feeling more anxiety. And we practice that through, leaning into difficult poses. Can you find your balance in the midst of chaos? Can you lean into the discomfort? Can you get curious about what's coming up for you physically, mentally, emotionally? And I think that all of those things are so powerful because these are all muscles, right? Mindfulness is a muscle. So the more that we use it, the more that we can actually utilize it in the real world. So in terms of healing, I would really encourage anyone who's looking to, overcome codependency or things like that, to find a daily practice that really works for you. It doesn't have to be an hour-long, hot yoga session, just something that really works for you, that really grounds you, that allows you to access your intuition. The word yoga means union, to yoke, or to unify our mind, body, and our spirit, and all these components of who we are, to bring them all into one. It's such a beautiful, I get the chills when I think about it. But it's an opportunity for us to come back into homeostasis, to ignite all of these components of who we are into one. And it's always an opportunity to tune into ourselves, to ignite more compassion, more love for ourselves. It gives us the, the ability to drop out of our head, out of our ego mind, and into our heart space, which I think is so powerful. I really think that yoga is the answer to everything. I really do, just because
No bias.
So, yeah, no bias here. But because yoga is actually a moving meditation. A lot of people think that it's just the physical part, especially in the Western world. But we know that it's more about your connection to your breath than it is about manipulating your body to fit a pose. So when we tune into our breath, this gives us the opportunity, again, to heighten our awareness and to really assess our internal environment and know what's going on within us. And so in Eastern philosophy, they always say that the quality of your breath is the quality of your life. And I truly believe that. And so developing some kind of yoga practice, daily, consistent yoga practice, even if it's 5 minutes a day, just ground yourself, do the breath work and really focus on the breath, and not so much the physical component. I think a lot of times this essence of our breath gets neglected because as humans we are physical people, but it's so necessary for us to sit down and recharge. And I think just by connecting to our breath, again, our life force energy, we have the opportunity to really connect to the depths of our soul and the depths of who we are. And that's so important when overcoming codependency or people pleasing and things like that, because a lot of the time we are out of alignment with ourselves. A lot of the time we are operating from a place of inauthenticity, and sitting and really getting, clear. Does this feel good to me? These decisions, like really tuning into the body. The body is so smart. The body picks up on a lot of different things that the head can't. And so just tuning in. I hope that answered the question. I kind of went around about again.
It totally answered, right? Because like you just, at the end, you were saying, if we're people pleasing, right? Like you talked about how yoga and breath work help us tune in. I think people pleasing is the antithesis of tuning in. We are tuning out, right? I am being so perceptive, hyper vigilant about what you're thinking, feeling, and needing. There's tuning in doesn't exist. I don't know how we can do both at the same time. I don't sense that we do. And so if and when we have a daily practice and or go to yoga, right? I didn't know before that one class that my throat chakra was all jacked up, right? Because we had to tune in and sit, who knows what type of breath work or something we were doing. And I was like, oh man, it's right here. And yeah, I didn't have that opportunity before. And so again, if we're enabling, people pleasing, self-sacrificing, eventually, right, our shoulders are going to feel tense. We're going to get sick, fatigue. And when you sit and slow down, that's when you have the opportunity to really acknowledge, oh man, this actually doesn't feel good. This is not in alignment. I'm not being authentic in my work or relationship.
So true.
Yeah.
That's so powerful. And such a great example that you gave about your throat chakra being, tight and feeling like closure here. Where the whole, we have energy centers, and a lot of times we do get blocked. And I think that that's such a great example, because a lot of people, we don't think in terms of energy. We think physical on the outside only. But again, focusing on the outside is what a lot of people in codependency relationships or just codependent people tend to do. So really like allowing ourselves the opportunity to tune inward is so powerful, so powerful.
Amen. And right, for the listener, and I'm also curious, if we're trying to put a daily routine together, if we find ourselves having a moment, like where should we start with yoga or breath work?
Yeah. So I would definitely seek out a yoga class, get your feet wet.
Which so many are virtual right now.
Yeah.
It's so easy to attend and look like an idiot if you were worried about it before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's the best part. You can tune in from anywhere. And so I would definitely say, try out a class and find something from the class, a few poses that really feel good to you. Again, coming from this non-codependency place, I'm merely a guide. I can show you, but it needs to feel good to you, because again, we want to access our intuition. We want to deepen our relationship with ourselves. So really practicing a flow that feels good, you are allowing yourself to be trusted. Your intuition can trust you. It can strengthen because you're honoring it. And so I think really listening to your internal guidance system after taking a few classes and picking a few poses that feel good. Twists are always really great for detoxing the body, bringing fresh oxygen, fresh blood to the body. We have inversions that are really great for mental clarity. There's a ton of benefits to different types of yoga poses. But again, it's all about meeting ourselves where we're at and evolving from there. So maybe one day you start with 5 poses that feel really good to you. You feel connected to your body, you're moving energy through the body, you're stretching, you're breathing. And then maybe the next day you add another one. Then you do 6 poses, then 7, then 8, and just really develop a routine that feels good. Yeah, I think it's a practice. Mindfulness is a practice. So starting one step at a time is really, really beneficial.
Right. And I didn't even think about this example in preparing for today, but I was very codependent in a job from like 25 to 28-ish. And I had to drive all over LA County.
Wow.
Developed severe lower back pain from the driving. And went to the chiropractor, and he was like, you need to do yoga. And I was like, I need to bring it back, right? Because I was neglecting self-care. And so since that time, that really was when I was able to implement a morning routine. And I've done that, arguably for the past 5-6 years, which is great. But I didn't quit the job immediately. So that also didn't help because I was still in this codependent position. But, really reflecting, I think it was while I was working there, I was going to therapy, I was seeing the chiropractor, I was doing my daily yoga, I was journaling. And so enough awareness came from all of those that, I think eventually it was like, I need to get out of here.
Yeah.
So if I didn't have those 10 minutes in the morning before I rushed out the door, who knows how much more disconnected I would have been, right? Absolutely. Just really cut off from, like you said, like the soul and our source energy.
Yeah. It's so great that you bring that up too, because I think that yoga is a fantastic way to, tune into your body, but there's also a multitude of other ways too. And as a yoga instructor, my main, mission is to help people find happiness and through breath work and meditation and yoga and self-care and all that. But maybe it's not yoga. Maybe for you or for somebody else, it's meditation or journaling, or it's going back to these hobbies or these things that really fill you up. And I am a strong believer that discipline is freedom. So consistency is so necessary because it gives us something to, it's a reliable source for us to know that we can lean on this when we are in times of chaos. And hopefully by doing a daily practice, we don't need to get to that point. We already just have a consistent routine. I think that's always pairing that with other things, and we evolve over time. Maybe you don't feel like meditating, maybe you want to go do kickboxing instead. That's what I'm doing right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right, but I love that. Discipline is freedom. I think a lot of codependents struggle with that. Discipline with boundaries, with at work, with others, with our self-care. But once we start, right, we develop that self-trust, getting in touch with our intuition, getting in touch with what's really true for us.
Yeah.
So your prescription is discipline.
Yeah.
Not a certain... Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, discipline with grace and compassion always. We're not like so, but I would say more than discipline, it's consistency. Just being consistent at something, really giving yourself the time to delve into something, and not expecting to see, miraculous, results the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Really giving yourself the opportunity to experience the journey and know that the journey really is the reward at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Amen, Hailey. Well, thank you so much. And if a listener is curious about attending a class or breathwork that you teach, where can people find you?
Yeah, so right now I am most active on Instagram. I am at breathe_and_bloom. And you can find me there. I do go live every Sunday for complimentary yoga. So if you just want to check it out or just get your Sunday kickstarted with some self-care, please join me.
What time?
9 a.m.
9 a.m. Pacific.
Standard Time. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Awesome.
And then I do have a membership. If you wanted to join my membership is an all women's community and it's via Facebook. We have wonderful opportunities for daily yoga. I do self-care videos. I teach any type of wellness tools that I think are valuable for us. And it's also just a space for us to create community and to continue striving to be the best version of ourselves. So I do once a month, I try to do some kind of event, whether it's a women's happy hour and game night. Last time we did a all women self-defense class, which was really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And sound healing. You'll be coming on soon, which we're really excited about, to learn more about mental health and self-care. So yeah, you can get in touch with me and check it out. I would love to have you guys.
Awesome. And I'll be sure to put that in the show notes, all your info about your free class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a wonderful conversation.
Oh, hello again. Such a great interview. Thank you, Hailey. And now today's announcement. So Hailey said, right, we need to be curious, start to explore, and create our own routine of poses. So today on my Instagram, Therapy with Marissa, as well as on my YouTube channel, I have a short video of my top 10 favorite yoga poses. I do these most days. Okay, girl? Most days. And I'm going to walk you guys through. I'm not an instructor. Hailey said not to make her your guru. I'm just going to walk you guys through my top 10 favorite yoga poses to help model what you can create and just to walk the talk when it comes to what Hailey's encouraging us to do. So check out my Instagram or YouTube and I will see you guys next week. Till then, baby girl, codependent, remember, if you are feeling unseen, I see you. If you are feeling unheard, I hear you. And if you think that you don't matter, know that you matter to me. Now I want you to go out there so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. You're still here? Just kidding. Girl, this is not therapy and I'm not your therapist, okay? This podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regards to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the publisher, or the guests are rendering any legal, clinical, or other professional information. If you want or need a professional, you should find one.